I actually went to MIT Sloan for undergrad. So I did their undergrad business program and was actually a teaching assistant for one of the MBA courses as an undergrad. Then I started working in consulting at Deloitte for a few years. And then I went to Wharton for the MBA. I started this company about 17 years ago after helping my friends get into their top choice schools. And then we expanded from there. We're a family business. I run it with my sister who lives down the road from me. And we have former admissions directors and top MBA graduates from many different programs. We spent 6 years on the board of directors for the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants. We have a lot of insight into these decision makers and what they're looking for and their backgrounds. And so we send a lot of people to MIT Sloan and many other schools. We can help you with personal story development, GMAT tutoring, essay editing, direct letter reviews, and we have former interviewers from a lot of the top schools as well. Our clients got over $11 million in scholarships last year. So that's a little bit about us. If you want any help, obviously with the application, reach out and let us know. But today, we're just going to talk through the MIT Sloan app. So a few things that come to mind before we start to walk through the application. First of all, Sloan cares about engagement. And so it's a school that wants you to show them that you like them. And so you want to visit. If you can't visit, you can do virtual things. There's virtual info sessions and coffee chats. Spend your time to engage with the school, and I think it will be helpful for you in the application process. And it's a bit of a different program. It's a bit of a different application. As we go through, we'll kind of chat through step by step. First of all, deadlines. Okay, deadlines, September 29th, really nice, right? It's late, it's great. You have time. So if you're not sure, can I make round one? What am I doing? Yada, yada. You have until the end of September. So that's really, really comfortable. They don't save space. So honestly, this is public knowledge. Donna says this regularly. They don't save space for people. So if you want to submit round one, it's going to increase your chances of getting in. That said, there is still round two and round three as well. There's an application fee, et cetera, et cetera. So these are not super, super important. I think most schools are pretty standard there. So going through the application, okay, you fill out your name and you fill out your address and your location and contact information, biographical details, gender, all this type of thing, right? So this is pretty standard. So it just goes to browse through this. And they ask if you're first gen. You have to fill out your educational background, and this again, pretty standard. You put the school and you put the year that you got the degree. Is your undergraduate degree a STEM degree, right? So MIT Sloan wants to know that you can do the analytical background, right? And when I was at MIT as an undergrad, it's hard. It's a tough school. It's a quant focused school, and so they want to know about your background. Then they ask, do you have any areas of concern with regard to your academic record? Okay, this is not. And if you could, if you could.
I'd like to know.
And we're going to have a whole Q&A section at the end. So here, I think the sharing stopped for a second. So let me go and share again. Can you see the screen share?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So if you have a poor undergraduate performance, then this is the time to write about that. Now, don't write a novel, okay? One little tip here is the more time you spend writing something, the more time the reader is going to read it. So naturally, if you write a whole bunch of stuff here, that's just more minutes that they're going to spend reading it. They won't spend double the time reading your application. They'll just probably spend less time going over other things. So be clear, be very specific. Coursework is helpful, right? So if you've taken calculus courses or some other type of analytical courses, and you want to show that this is demonstrating my ability to do well in the MBA classroom, this is where you would highlight that, and then any other sort of supporting materials. So that's on the academic side of things. Test scores. So you want to submit a test, right? Everyone has a different policy on waivers, but test scores are important, and even if there is a potential to waive, I do recommend submitting a test. So you would add the test. If you've taken the test multiple times, you can submit multiple scores, and that way it shows them some of the improvement that you've had over the years. So then employment. Okay, so they said we're interested in learning the kind of impact you've made as a professional. Begin with your current or most recent position and share the following experiences. Now here, MIT says you can list up to 3 entries. Okay, so pay attention to that. Three entries. This means not 4, right? If you only had one job, you don't have to list internships if you don't want to. Internships are sort of optional in my mind, right? So unless the school says you must submit all of the internships, I don't believe that MIT does, then the internships are up to you. But definitely talk about start date, end date, right? Make sure that the salary is accurate. So wherever you're communicating salary, it's important that that's accurate. Ideally within $1,000, right? I know some of you are just recently joining. So I'm Scott Edinburgh, founder of Personal MBA Coach, MIT undergrad, working for MBA, top ranked consultant in the country in the last couple of years, and our clients got over 11 million in scholarships. We're here to talk about MIT Sloan application. And they say, do you anticipate financial support from an employer? So that's nice. It's not required to have this, and it doesn't hurt you if you don't have it, right? If you say yes, then you click it. You have to write the company. If not, it's no. It does help because it shows that you're a strong person. What percent of tuition do you expect to be covered? Just, whatever that is, it's not a huge deal. Do you have a return offer? Do you anticipate other financial sponsorship, et cetera, et cetera? So they kind of want to know what your situation is. This doesn't mean that you won't get scholarships from a school if you mention this, by the way. How many years of full-time experience will they have by the time of this is upon matriculation, right? Sometimes people get confused. Fast forward until you start school, that's what they're looking for. In any gaps, you want to explain the gaps. Again, be brief. So if you're off for 2 months because your mother was in the hospital, then you write that, and maybe you write 1 sentence, right? You don't write an entire paragraph. So explain the gaps, be clear. Org chart. This is very different. Okay, no other school, to my knowledge, asks for an organizational chart. So they want to have an org chart. Now, if your company has an org chart, great. You can just grab that and use it, maybe manipulate it a little bit. If not, then you have to create that. They just want to see where you are relative to others. Sometimes people come from a lot of different types of companies, maybe a small company with 5 people, maybe a huge company with 50,000 people. They want to know where you are and where your role is relative to others, just so that they kind of have a sense of your responsibilities and how good you are, basically, right? So don't overthink this too much. Now, they say if you're a consultant, submit an org chart demonstrating the structure of a recent project. It can be a project, and the reason for this is they don't need to see that there's a huge consulting organization of 70,000 people or something, right? They just want to know where you are relative to others in a project. So org charts are important. If you have 2 projects that you want to talk about, you can submit org charts from two different projects as well. And it's good to highlight where you are in the org chart as well as highlight the recommender. Okay. Submit a 1-page resume. They even highlight it to help you. 1 page. If you have more than 1-page resume, do not submit it. 1 page for full-time MBA programs. Now, if anyone's doing an executive MBA program, you can do a 2-page. But for regular MIT Sloan, for MIT Sloan LGO, any of those, 1-page resume. Now, pay attention to this part. Okay, Sloan has certain requirements. They want these in reverse chronological order. So first, they want education. That's different. Other schools don't want that. So education first, then work experience. And then the additional stuff, extracurriculars. I like long walks on the beach. I play banjo, et cetera, et cetera. Make sure that your resume is a little bit different for MIT relative to other schools. So the cover letter. Okay, this is the biggest thing that you have to do is you write a cover letter. I won't read this whole introduction, but they want you to submit a cover letter seeking a place in MIT Sloan MBA program. So for those of you that have applied to jobs before where you had to write a cover letter, you might want to dust that off. That's what you're doing. You're writing a cover letter to say why you are going to be a good student. Now, this is not a why MBA essay. And so without, giving everything away, obviously, if you want to know how to get in, we can help you there. But to sort of talk about it at a high level, talk about what you would do at Sloan a little bit, talk about what you've done so far, and demonstrate that you would be a good student on campus. Now, MIT is not a very goals-focused school. So the idea is not to, write 150 words about your post MBA goals and how Sloan is going to get you there. They want people who are independent, authentic, fearlessly creative, redefine solutions to conventional problems, right? So show them how you've done these things in your life. And it's 300 words, so it's really, really short. Very different from doing other applications. And so if you haven't done a cover letter before, I would definitely think through what are some of the key themes that you want to highlight. And based on that, how are you going to kind of show those within the application? So that's on the cover letter. So for rec letters, okay, MIT wants one rec letter. They also want 2 people that are references. So first, let's talk about the rec letter. They say professional context is preferred. So no college, right? If you have a professor, I had a professor, she loved me, she's quote my mentor now, and she would really be a good recommender. No, she wouldn't, right? Nobody that's from college, unless you're working with that person professionally now. They have to submit it on time, make sure that they do, and they're answering these questions, right? How long and what capacity have they known you? How do you stand out from others? Impact on a person, group, or organization, right? Note that these questions are slightly different, nuanced than maybe some of the regular questions that other schools ask. And so make sure that they can actually answer these things. How you interact with other people. Okay, that's important. So they want to know you well. The thing about recommenders is I gave a presentation in San Francisco last night. I'm now in New York. In any case, they want to be very clear. So don't have someone who has a very high title just because they're the head of the company or something, right? It's much better to have someone who is very close to you, knows the things that you're doing, knows why you're good, and the types of contributions you make, and can compare you to others, right? So, Scott was one of the best, this isn't true. Scott was one of the best consultants out of the 52 people that I've worked with over the last 4 years because he did X, Y, Z, ABC, where other people did 1, 2, 3, right? Be able to go into that level of depth. Do not write your rec letter. Do not think about writing your rec letter. Do not dream of thinking about writing your rec letter. It's not worth it. I know it happens. I know a lot of people write their own rec letters. I know people use ChatGPT and all kinds of other garbage out there. Don't do it. That's my advice. I've been doing this forever. It's just not worth it. The schools can really see through if you are involved in this, and you shouldn't be. Better off to have someone who's able to do it on their own and figure out in the company, who can support the recommender if they don't have the time to do so. So that's on the recommendation front. And here we go, and we rec letters. So then there's these references, right? So they also say, they want to have the best chance to show your strengths. So if we still have questions after reading your application, we might reach out to your additional references. Usually this doesn't happen. I will tell you that. Now, of course, it might happen for you or it might not happen for you, but you just want to write down names of people that they can reach out to if they have questions, right? Certain things they're not clear about. They don't know whether you have strong analytical experiences or whatever it might be. And so you do have to have 3 people total, 2 that you say, hey, you might be called, but they probably won't be, and then 1 that's actually going to write your rec letter. And if you can't ask your current manager because they'll fire you, then don't ask your current manager, right? You can certainly ask somebody else. Then they have the world that shaped you question. So how has the world you come from shaped who you are today? For example, your family, culture, community, all help to shape aspects of your life experiences and perspective. Please use this opportunity to share more about your background. That's a pretty open-ended question, 250 words. Okay, where are you from? I think as you think about this question, sure, is this a diversity question? Yes. Can they say that? No. They just want to know things about you that made you who you are today, and they want to understand the motivations behind the things that you've been doing in your career, how you're shaping yourself, how you think about others, how you think about giving back, why. And so let's say if you grew up without internet, or come from a rural farming family, and you were taught the importance of living off the land more than anything else, right? These are just things that schools want to know so that they can try to get a holistic picture of you. There's not one master answer here. This question used to be optional, and now it's not optional. So to be clear, this is required. And so they want to know more about your background. If you come from a well-off family and there's really no, challenges, let's talk about that. Maybe there's some kind of sports experience that you have, or maybe, there was some extra stress in the house because everybody did well and you were pushed to be, a doctor, and now here you are applying to business school, right? Just sort of think through the things about you that you might want to highlight. So this is actually pretty important. So you click the round, okay, round 1, round 2, round 3, pretty easy. Dual degrees. If you were live, I'd say, how many of you are applying to a dual degree? You all raise your hands. So you can do a dual degree with Harvard Kennedy School, MIT Department of Urban Studies, and then LGO. So LGO is really, really fun. We send usually like 2 to 3 folks to LGO each year. And it's an operations focus, master's, right? And so let's say if you're working at Boeing or Lockheed Martin, not to single out anybody, you're doing ops research, ops consulting, processes, right? This might be the right program for you. Now, if you come from a finance background and you want to transition into management consulting, LGO is probably not the right place for you. So they ask you if you're applying to these. Are you currently a PhD student? If so, they ask for these things, right? So this just shows you. Now, if you are doing LGO, you have to write more content. There's LGO specific content that you have to cover. If you're applying to HKS, there's HKS essays that you have to write because it's a dual degree. So keep that in mind. Should you do a dual degree? Should you not? It depends on the person. I think for the right candidate, LGO is a really great way to apply to school because I believe it's a good way to showcase your uniqueness, but don't select it just because it feels like it's something fun to do. So video 1, introduce yourself to your future classmates. Here's your chance to put a face to your name, let your personality shine through, be conversational, and be yourself. We can't wait to meet you. That's very motivational. Now it's 1 minute, okay? When they say 1 minute, meaning if you upload a 62-second video, why are you even bothering to try, right? It's very specific here, 60 seconds, so pay attention to that. Single take, right? You're looking at the camera, speaking to the camera. You don't want background stuff. You don't want to have cut it out and make some sort of crazy thing. Now, if you're in action, let's say you are great. I just got my family back into skiing. Well, they started skiing. I got back into skiing after 20 years. So now I'm all into skiing. Let's say you want to do skiing and you're up on the top of a mountain, probably not now in July, but let's say around 2. You can do that, right? Have someone video you on top of a ski mountain and you're starting to go down and you're talking. That would be kind of cool. Not required. You can also just be sitting at your desk, wearing a suit like I am, very boring. That's fine too. But you don't want to, sort of cut back and forth. And this is fun, right? This is not, hello, my name is Scott. I am from Massachusetts. I went to MIT for undergrad. I worked in consulting and I'm excited to go to Sloan to take my next leap in life. No, that's not what they want. They want to know fun things, interesting things, food that you like, or some kind of extracurricular that you're involved in, maybe some sort of mentorship passion of yours. They really want to have you, again, introduce yourself to others. So that's that. I think we have to click here. Let's see if this works here. Video question 2. So now you have a random question, right? So rather than recorded, it's open-ended. And they could ask anything. Now, sure, their list of questions are out there. You can look at the list and maybe that predicts what you want to be prepping, but they can ask you anything. So this is random and you really want to be ready to answer whatever they have. Don't try to use ChatGPT here either. Believe me, it's not going to be good. But it's not so much about the answer, it's about how you deliver the answer. So the content isn't so important. They do this so that they can see how you perform in a live setting. Why? Because you might be doing that for a job. Maybe there's a job interview, and if you get tripped up and don't know how to answer a question on camera, well, you might not be as good of a student, right? So don't worry too much about this. We do a lot of prep at Personal MBA Coach to help people through these videos. We have a whole program that you can download that has like sample questions, it has a timer, it spits it out. We'll review mock videos. So if that's something that is of concern to you, let us know. But usually people will don't get rejected just for this purpose. It's just another data point for them. Oh, interesting. Okay, so that was unable to find. Okay, so there are additional questions. So funding, yeah. So this is basically the MIT Sloan application. I'll say a few more things right now for MIT. Engaging with the school is important. I mentioned that a little bit before. Go to events. Now, they might not have tons of events for you and where you're located, and that's okay. Just watch the website, refresh them, see more events. We're pretty close to Sloan. We get a lot of people there in each year, and we got over 11 million in scholarships last year. I would say maybe 10% of that was from MIT. MIT is not the biggest scholarship school, but they do have a decent budget, and so you can certainly win a lot of money from Sloan if you do well. So now there's a lot of questions. So I think I'm going to stop rambling and go to the questions. Okay, so a question from Tommy. Hi, Scott. If you can't visit before submitting an application in round one, does it still make sense to continue to engage with the school and plan visits in October, November before they release results? That's a good question. Yes, it still will help. Of course, the earlier you do it, the better, right? Because if it's a week before, then maybe they've already decided that they want you or don't want you. But certainly during the interview process, that might still help you. Okay, so can letters of support be from current students, or rather, can letters of support from current students and alumni be sent to AdCom? Yes. So these are informal, right? So if you have someone, friend of yours or a colleague who is a Sloan grad and they want to recommend you to the program, you can have that happen. They wouldn't want to write a full letter. It's just a couple paragraphs about why you would be a good fit, let's say, for the school, and you can have that, but don't have a lot of those sent. Otherwise, it doesn't show great judgment. Here, and please keep asking questions, and we'll try to get to as many of these as we can. Along with 3 years at a software company, would my startup founder experience of 2 years, which was not financially successful, be taught a lot of values and field gas, be a good experience to apply for school? Yes. So if you are a founder, right, even if it doesn't, even if it doesn't go well, you learn a lot. Okay, most startups fail, and so don't worry about the fact that you didn't succeed. Most startups don't succeed, and so that's fine. The point is, you learned, you explored yourself. You probably have a lot of these, let's say small successes and maybe larger failures, and now you want to go to business school to round that out and figure out next time how to improve your funding model, how to hire better talent, maybe create a better org structure, whatever it is that didn't quite go well. That's definitely good experience that you should be writing about. How do MBA admissions committees typically view startup founders versus corporate employees with similar profiles? What are the key advantages and potential drawbacks of an entrepreneur background in the admissions process? Right, so very similar to what I just talked about before. I guess benefits is it shows a lot of leadership and initiative, right? Schools want people who have taken initiative to do something. MIT wants innovators, and it's probably nice if they see how you influence others to make decisions. So how do you do that? Well, in a startup, you're doing that every day. And so I think that's a benefit. And you probably work, I guess maybe not relative to investment banking or something, but you probably work more. So you have more, quote, experience, not necessarily by months, but probably by hours and maybe even by days. And so that's great. Drawback, it's harder to evaluate, if I'm working for, Kungbu startup as a growth manager, what does that mean? I don't even know what that is. I just made that up. And so it's harder for me to say, okay, what is this guy doing at, Kungbu versus someone that's at Accenture or someone that's at, General Electric or someone that's at Morgan Stanley or, some larger firm that we're just more comfortable with. So that's a drawback. It's not necessarily bad. Schools need people from a lot of different backgrounds, and they can't have everybody from a big company, and they don't want everybody from a big company. But the onus is on you a little bit more to communicate what you did and how you did it and why it was so good, because you're coming from a company that they just might not be as familiar with. And then startups, look, if they don't do well, you have to get another job. And so then your resume might be a little bit choppy. So at the talk I gave in San Francisco last night, someone said, what if I have, X jobs and if it's choppy, right? So in a startup, you might have more of that. Okay, I currently have 5 years of experience in business product analytics, working in multiple geographies, India, Middle East. Now I'm moving to Europe for a new job. I'm thinking to do an MBA either this year or next year when I have 6 or 7 years of experience. Does international work experience help me tell a unique story about myself and give me an edge? Yes, international experience helps. I did some international consulting work and I wrote a lot about it. I think it helped me. So yes, the more markets you're in, the better. I will say though, if you have 5 years of experience and especially you've already worked for, different places and different countries, I don't know that I would wait a year or two. I mean, if you look at the class profiles, right, and look at the class profiles, they're there for a reason. The average number of years of experience is 5. What does that mean? It means that's the best. Now, if you apply with 2, that can happen. I talked to a guy earlier today. He's going to have 2 years of experience. There's a range, but past 5, it's not better. Right? It's never better to have more work experience, unless the job is so much more attractive than the previous role, where maybe it makes sense. But for the most part, I would say if you have 5 years of experience, maybe just apply. And I'll go off on a tangent because that's what I do. So this is a really good time to apply. This year will not be the busiest year ever from an applicant standpoint. And so if you're thinking about it and you're sort of ready to go, then I would go for it. We're even having some younger folks go this year versus waiting, because the prediction is by next year, let's say there's some international folks that are perhaps hesitating to apply. And by next year, more of them will be coming, plus more people will lose their jobs. I'm predicting a harder year next year than this year. So yeah, international experience is great, but I would say maybe don't wait another year or two. I would just maybe apply now. Salary needs to be in US dollars. Yes, so your salary should be in US dollars. So you can convert it. And don't worry if you are from a country where the conversion isn't great. They know that you're compared to other similar people, right? Similar companies, similar countries. You won't be compared to a Manhattan salary if you're in a developing market, but it should be in US dollars. And again, try to get it within $1,000 so that you avoid any background check issues later. Is there an advantage to having a PhD? I got to say no, to be honest. There's not. It's not bad, though. We certainly have clients every year, many of them that have PhDs, and they can bring their own, perspective that maybe someone else can't bring. So it's not a horrible thing, but I don't see someone I say, oh, great, PhD. That's like a check plus versus a check. Not really. Schools don't need PhDs. If it helps and you've learned and you've progressed, you've grown, that can be fine. MIT does actually give you some credit for experience of the PhD, but you have to look by school. So you won't necessarily get a 1-for-1 years of experience, and sometimes you won't get any credit. And so then you'll need work experience after the PhD. Okay. And again, if anyone's interested in working with us on applications, obviously reach out, personalmbacoach.com, and you can schedule a consultation. Now, note, we do not offer free profile reviews, just to give advice. If you've reviewed our packages and prices and you're in market to hire us, then we're happy to chat further, because I know there's some specific questions that we won't be able to get into today. How should you represent a new role post-app deadline if you're leaving your job end of September to go to a new role? Yeah, that's a good question. Well, timing is not ideal. I would say if you can stick it out and maybe not leave, honestly, that's going to be better. If it's already done, it's done, you're leaving and there's no way to sort of change that, then you might want to wait to see what the role is like, because you are applying based on what you have right now, right? And so if you start writing about a new role and you haven't done anything in the new role, it's harder to communicate that. So you can communicate updates to your profile after you've submitted. Now, if you know what you're going to do already, you could always predate the resume, let's say, and post date, or whichever one. And so you could write the new role and the dates, and then just the job description. But if you don't really know what it's going to be, you could always update them later once you actually start in the new role. About org chart, my company divided and became two, and now it's smaller. Should I provide the old chart? No, I would provide a current org chart, because that's kind of what they want. The size doesn't matter. It's more important where you are relative to others. Now, in the old org chart, if you were way up here, and in the new one, you're way down here, and you spent 95% of your career up here, and all of a sudden it just changed. Okay, in that case, maybe it's okay to provide two. But otherwise, I would probably just do the new one. And I don't think the number of people is really that important. So for a consultant's org chart, what exactly should we show where it asks to highlight your role? Can you give an example? Your role, well, so business analysts, maybe that's the first role, and then consultant is the next role, and then senior consultants, and then managers. And if you're on a project where there's 3 business analysts and 2 consultants, you're one of the consultants, so you highlight yourself. And then there's some senior consultants and a couple managers and a senior manager and a partner. That's essentially what it would look like. Do the 2 references that they contact have to be senior? No, they don't. And again, they probably won't contact them. So it's just, people that are open to talking about you if the school has questions. The title really doesn't matter for them, because they're maybe or maybe not actually even a part of this process. Can the org chart be from 2 companies, especially if the last company was more impressive? I think we just answered that one. Here's one. My old boss knows me very well, but she left in the beginning of the year. Can I choose her for the recommendation letter? Yes, you can. It's okay to not have a current recommender. I mentioned a little bit about this before, especially if they don't maybe support you in your MBA journey, then you're better off to have somebody who does support you. So yes, it's totally fine to have a former boss write the rec letter. You might just want to explain that one little sentence. Jane knew me very well, and we worked together for 3 years. Billy just started, and he's pretty remote, and we don't have a lot of oversight, or something like that. He doesn't have one oversight. Does the LOR need to be on company's letterhead? No, it does not. Okay. If you're interested in LGO and are more business product oriented and want to enter a more technical or engineering space, do you think that's possible? I would say yes. I see more of the students with an engineering background looking to expand business acumen. Yeah, that's definitely possible, because LGO is a mix of both, right? So if you want to go a little bit more technical, yes, you're right. Most LGO folks, they start a bit technical and then they sort of go a little bit more business, but also a lot of people just do operations work. And so if you're doing operations work and you want to get into more of like a, biz tech ops or something, that's probably not what you're talking about. I think it's definitely fine. Okay, questions keep coming. Right, we'll keep going. Okay, how does MIT differentiate essays written by AI versus human? Should we totally avoid these of AI? I recommend avoiding AI. How do they do it? So I can't say specifically publicly what each school is doing, but what I can say is it's really not hard to figure this out. Regardless of whether a school you're applying to is using any technology to figure out what technology you used, right? Because that is going to vary. Even if they're just using their mind, our editors are all mostly PhDs, Ivy League schools. We do a lot of detailed editing. And often an editor will come to me and say, hey, so-and-so, I think they're using AI. They have a bunch of words together. There's a lot of commas. It's pretty clear that it's not them. So I would say avoid it, because I don't think it's going to help you that much. Why engage with schools and events? Well, why engage? Because it shows them that you're really interested in the program. Schools want to have a high yield, and if they don't see you engaging and making the effort, they don't believe that you're going to go. That's one reason. Two, the more that you engage, the more you have a feeling of what the school's like, the more likely you are to know if it's the right program, the more likely you are to be happy going there. Schools don't want you to matriculate if you're not going to be happy. So the more comfortable you are, maybe the happier you're going to be. How would you advise someone with 12 years of experience to approach the decision of whether to apply to Sloan or the MIT Sloan Fellows program? So I would say MIT Sloan Fellows. I mean, that's an easy answer for me because I think you're old for the MIT Sloan regular program. Now, that doesn't mean you won't get in. There's definitely a range of people that get into all these programs, and we're happy to review you offline if you send me an email. But 12 years is more like a Sloan Fellows candidates. Now, Sloan Fellows is a one-year program. It's an MBA. It's full-time. It's great. Some of my friends went there. We send people there every year, but it's for people with 10 or more years of experience. And the average is around 14. So if you're 12, I'd say you're probably more of a candidate for Sloan Fellows. And also, you'll just be challenged more, right? The thing about the MBA is most people are young. You know, you're like 27, 28, been working for a handful of years. You love to get some associate job somewhere, maybe manager if you're doing really well, and you haven't done a lot. By the time you have 12 years of experience, my guess is you've just experienced a lot, and you've probably gone through a lot, and you're a little bit further on your career, and so I don't think you'll be challenged as much in a traditional two-year program. So that's my advice, but happy to sort of take that offline. Okay, we answered that one. How does a gap of 3 to 5 months between the jobs affect the application? Is it perceived in a negative way by outcomes? Well, I mean, it's not positive, right? Obviously, work experience helps the process. And if you don't have work experience, that would have to be negative. But that doesn't mean you won't get in. People apply with gaps, especially in this market that we're in now. People are losing their jobs. It happens to a lot of folks. So that does not keep you out of the workforce. What they want to see is what have you been doing during this time? What's the next step, right? So if you've been out of work for 5 months and you apply now and you don't have any plan for like doing anything else, then that's probably not a good thing, right? But if you're out, you're interviewing and you're lining things up, and there's a very clear plan of what's going to come next, then that's probably better. I'll just keep answering questions. You tell me when I need to stop.
Yeah, so we have a hard stop in 4 minutes. So if you are happy to continue with a couple more questions, we can go there.
Great, that's what I thought. Okay, cool. So, okay, so I answered about AI before. You don't need to mention about a gap before undergrad. If I have over 10 years of experience, I think we talked about that just now. And how important is cultural fit for foreign students, and how do we incorporate it into our essays, especially with the current situation in the US regarding foreign students? How do we handle this? So I wouldn't worry about the current situation regarding cultural fit. I think those are two different things, right? There's current stuff going on visa-wise that hopefully and probably will all be solved. These things tend to get solved. And then fit is like, is this program right for you? And schools want international students. So it doesn't matter where you're from. They want people that feel like they fit the bill. So I don't know that those two things go together. I mean, I think cultural fit is just as important for applicants, regardless of where they're from. It's more like, are you going to sort of blend in well with the school? MIT Sloan does accept the GRE, yes, in the home edition as well. I got an internship, then got promoted to part-time during my last semester, then got full-time. Should I enter the full period application or only a full-time? Yeah, so just full-time. So work experience is post-undergrad work experience. Anything before you graduate does not count as far as numbers of months. Now they'll look at it, they might give you some credit, but it doesn't count. Okay. I'm still deciding between round 1 and round 2. Can I sign up the application now and decide that? Yes. So you saw as I was doing the app, you can just change the drop down. So if you finish everything and you're like, my test score is terrible, I have to do round 2. You just click the drop down from round 1, make it round 2, and all is done. Okay, so probably one more question. For person with 10 plus years of experience, how much is the GMAT GRE score requirement both for executive and 2-year program? So for an executive program, whether it's an executive MBA, which is part-time, or for a like Sloan Fellows, which is full-time, test scores are not as important. They're looking a little bit more at your work experience, at how senior you are, leadership, and that sort of thing. So the numbers are not quite as important as it is for the two-year program. So I want to thank everybody for coming. It was a pleasure to chat through things with you all, and wishing you the best of luck. Again, visit personalmbacoach.com for tips and advice. Go to the rest of these fun walkthrough sessions with GMAT Club, and hope you all have a great rest of the week, and wish you luck in this application process.
Thank you all for joining. Have a good one.